In this video, we're going to have a look at how we can version control our code in Databricks. The way we're going to do that is by creating a repository in GitHub. Then we're going to link that repository to a Databricks workspace. Then finally, we're going to commit and push the code from our Databricks workspace by making some code changes to GitHub. The first thing we'll do is to create a repository on github.com. Initially, you need to create a user to be able to do that. So if you don't have one, create a user. A new repository where we will host our code that we develop in Databricks. For the repository, we'll give the repository a name and we can give it a small description. I will make the repo available public. We can create a README file and then we can simply create the repository. We press here and in a few seconds we actually have our new and fresh repository, which only now have a README file. So we are now ready to move on and look into our Databricks workspace and see how we can link this repository to our code there. I have now navigated to the Databricks account, and from here I can open my development workspace. From the development workspace I will navigate to the workspace tab here. And in my personal folder here, I would like to create a link to the repo that we just created. So we press on the create button here, and then it gives us the option to add a Git folder. So this is what we want to do. And then we need the Git repository URL, which we can find if we navigate back to GitHub. We press in code, and then we get the link we're interested in from here. So I copy that and we put it in. It auto realizes that it's GitHub, but otherwise you can choose your favorite Git provider. We can give it a name. It doesn't have to be the same as the repo, but let's just keep it here for now. And it also has options to make a sparse checkout if you don't want to clone the entire repo, but only a subfolder or something like that. So let's press create Git folder. And that actually synchronizes our Git repository into this particular folder in our Databricks workspace. So what we have right now is only a README file, but now we actually have the option to create additional files in here and synchronize it back into GitHub. It also allows us to work with branches. So for now we only have a main branch, but it also allows us to create, for instance, a feature branch if we want to develop in something, and we also have other developers working in the same repository at the same time. Before we can start synchronizing code the other way, we need to set up our Git credentials within Databricks. So we actually need to give our Databricks workspace here access to the repository to actually push code back into GitHub. The way you do that is to go to the upper corner, you go into settings, then you press linked accounts, and then you have the option to set up a Git provider and link an account. So let's use the link Git account and we use GitHub as the provider. We press link and here we will authorize to Databricks. And this basically sets up the link between my GitHub user and my Databricks workspace here. What we can do next is let's go back to the workspace. Let's go into our repository and then let's try to create a notebook. So we can do that here. Let's create a notebook and let's create some small program here that just adds together two numbers. All right. Seems to be working. Okay, let's say we are satisfied with this code here. So let's give this a more proper name for the notebook. And then what we want is to basically push our changes to make sure that we don't lose our contributions that we made to the code base. So we want to push it back to our GitHub repo. If we go back to GitHub right now and we refresh our repo, we can't see the changes we made so far. So what we need to do is basically to push the code from Databricks into our repo. The way we do that, go back to Databricks, we press on the tab up here, so it indicates that we are on the main branch. Let's stay there for now. Then you can see basically the changes you made since or compared to the main branch. And let's say we want to push these changes. So initially we need to commit the changes. So we add function, and then it allows us basically to commit and push our changes to our. Alright, there's something going on here. Okay, it seems like we need to give some additional access to Databricks, so we need to install it here. Okay, so basically what we need to do is now to select which repositories there should be access to for Databricks. So let's choose the one we have created, and then we will install it. Alright, so it seems it was installed now. So let's go back to Databricks and see if we can commit and push now. Yes, that seems to be working. So successfully committed and pushed changes to the branch main. So let's go back to GitHub. Let's do a refresh. And what we can see now is we have added the add notebook Python file here. And if we open that up, yes, there we have it, the changes that we made in Databricks. If you at some point want to change the access that Databricks has to GitHub, either by adding or removing some repositories from the access list, then it's possible to go into our repository. We can go into settings, then we can scroll a bit down, and then we can look at the bottom here at Git integrations or GitHub apps, and this is where we can find the Databricks installation that we did previously when we tried to commit and push the code. So if you want to do changes at some point, then you can go here and update this GitHub app. So right now you can see it has read access to metadata, and it has read and write access to the code. And then we have chosen specific repos that we want to give access to. What we have done in this video was to create a Git repository. Then we created a Git folder in Databricks, copying over the GitHub repo that we created. Then we created a linked Git provider in Databricks. And then we made some code changes in our Git Databricks folder. We added this add function. Then we wanted to push our code back. But before we could do that, we had to install the Databricks app on the GitHub repository. After we had done that, then we were able to commit and push our changes back into our GitHub repository. I hope you liked this video about how to version control your code in Databricks using GitHub.